Last Halloween was supposed to be like every other Halloween I'd experienced. A night filled with laughter, candy, and harmless fun, where kids in costumes roamed the streets, and spooky decorations turned every house into a spectacle. But that night, something happened that I can never forget. It still haunts me, lurking in the corners of my mind, making me question whether it was all real or just a horrifying nightmare. But I'll let you decide. The evening began as any typical Halloween night. My friends and I, dressed in our best costumes, grabbed our candy bags and set out to scour the neighborhood. The air was cool, crisp even, but not cold. The full moon lit up the sky, casting a silvery glow over the streets, and the neighborhood buzzed with the sounds of children laughing and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Houses were decorated with glowing jack-o'-lanterns, fake cobwebs, and spooky ghosts hanging from tree branches. The entire neighborhood felt alive, vibrant, and full of excitement. But as we moved through the streets, the energy shifted. It happened slowly at first, just a subtle chill in the air, a feeling of something watching us from the shadows. It was so faint that I dismissed it as nothing more than my imagination running wild. We were teenagers after all. It was Halloween and fear was part of the fun. Everything seemed normal, up until we reached the end of the street. There, standing ominously, was the old house. Every town has one, the house no one dares approach, the one everyone claims is haunted. It had been empty for years, neglected and decaying, with overgrown weeds swallowing the front yard, tall, twisted trees looming above it, and windows that were either cracked or completely shattered. It was the type of house that gave you an uneasy feeling just by looking at it. For as long as I could remember, no one had ever lived there. The stories of ghosts and dark shadows seen moving inside were the stuff of legend, passed down from older kids to the younger ones. But that night, something was different. There was a light on inside. We all froze, staring at the house from a distance. I remember the prickling sensation running down my spine, the way my palms suddenly felt clammy despite the cool night air. It was subtle, a single soft glow from an upstairs window, but it was enough to send a wave of discomfort through our group. "Did you see that?" Sarah, my best friend, asked in a low voice. Jack, ever the daredevil of our group, immediately perked up. "Come on, let's check it out," he said, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to say no, to turn around and walk away. "I don't think we should," I muttered, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. Something about that house, especially with that eerie light flickering inside, felt off. It wasn't just the typical haunted house vibe. It was deeper than that, more sinister. But peer pressure is a powerful thing, and Jack wasn't backing down. The rest of the group hesitated, exchanging nervous glances, but soon enough, we found ourselves trailing behind Jack as he made his way toward the house. My heart pounded in my chest with every step we took toward that rusted iron gate. The closer we got, the more unsettling the house became. The air grew colder, and an eerie silence settled over the street as though the usual Halloween festivities couldn't reach this cursed corner of town. The gate creaked loudly as Jack pushed it open. The sound sliced through the night like a warning. The path leading to the front door was overgrown with weeds, and the trees around the house seemed to bend and twist unnaturally. Fallen branches littered the walkway, making it difficult to move without tripping. On the porch, a single jack-o'-lantern sat, its face carved into a devilish grin, the candle inside flickering weakly. I couldn't shake the feeling that the pumpkin was watching us, mocking us for coming closer. We reached the front door, which hung slightly ajar. I felt my stomach drop. The door wasn't just open, it looked as though someone, or something, was waiting for us. Jack, ever the brave one, knocked on the door 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. The sound echoed through the empty house, but there was no response. I swallowed hard, wishing more than anything that we could just leave. But Jack wasn't about to give up. He reached out and pushed the door open wider, revealing a long, dark hallway. The air that drifted out was cold, unnaturally cold. It wasn't just the temperature, there was something else in that chill, something wrong. The smell hit us next, a mix of damp rot and something far worse, something sour, something that smelled like decay. A deep, primal fear settled in my gut, but before I could voice my concerns, Jack had already stepped inside. "Come on," he whispered, his voice sounding oddly distant in the hollow silence of the house. Reluctantly we followed, one by one, stepping into the darkness. The door groaned as it swung shut behind us, sealing us inside. My pulse quickened, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. The house was completely still, save for the occasional creak of floorboards beneath our feet. I kept my eyes forward, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that unseen eyes were following our every move. As we made our way down the hallway, the walls seemed to close in around us. The house felt alive, its very structure seemed to shift and groan, as if it were aware of our presence. Faded pictures hung on the walls, their frames crooked and covered in dust. But as we passed them, something strange began to happen. The eyes in the portraits, they followed us. I know how ridiculous that sounds, but I swear it's true. No matter where I moved, those painted eyes were locked on me, filled with an almost desperate intensity, as though they were trying to warn us, trying to tell us to get out while we still could. "Guys, I really think we should leave," I whispered, the unease creeping into my voice. Jack laughed softly, but it sounded forced. "It's just an old house. Don't be scared," he said, though I could see the tension in his shoulders. The hallway stretched on, leading us deeper into the house, into the unknown. The further we went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls seemed to throb, pulsing with a strange, unexplainable energy. The floor beneath us creaked ominously, and I could have sworn I heard faint footsteps behind us, though every time I glanced back there was nothing. At the end of the hallway we found the grand staircase. Its once beautiful wood was now warped and rotting, the banister covered in thick layers of dust. Jack turned to us with that familiar glint of mischief in his eyes. "Let's go upstairs," he said. "No," I said more firmly this time. But it was too late. Jack was already halfway up the stairs, and the rest of the group, caught between fear and curiosity, hesitated only for a moment before following him. The stairs groaned beneath our weight, each step sounding louder than the last. The higher we climbed, the colder the air became, biting into our skin. At the top of the stairs, we found ourselves in front of a narrow hallway, lined with closed doors. Each one looked as though it had been shut for decades, their surfaces cracked and splintered with age. Jack went for the first door, pushing it open with a loud creak. The room beyond was empty, save for an old, dusty bed and a broken dresser. A cracked mirror hung on the far wall, its surface warped and foggy. But something in the reflection caught my eye. At first I thought it was just a trick of the light, but then I saw it clearly, a shadowy figure standing behind us. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. But there was nothing there. "We need to go," I said, panic rising in my chest. But Jack was already moving on to the next door. This room was different. It was colder, darker, as if the shadows themselves were alive, writhing and shifting in the corners. Candles were arranged in a circle on the floor, their flames flickering weakly. Strange symbols were scrawled on the walls in what looked like red paint, but the smell of iron told me otherwise. This was no innocent prank. Something sinister had happened here. And then I saw it. In the far corner of the room a figure stood. Cloaked in black, its face hidden beneath a hood, it didn't move, didn't make a sound. But its presence filled the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. My heart pounded in my ears, my body frozen in place as the figure turned its head ever so slightly, as if it had just noticed as Jack, oblivious to the danger, moved toward it, his face slack and expressionless, almost as if he were in a trance. "Jack, no!" I screamed, but my voice felt small, insignificant in the suffocating silence of the room. The figure moved then, not like a person but like a shadow, gliding silently across the floor. It stopped inches from Jack, its hood slowly lifting to reveal a face twisted in an unnatural, grotesque grin. Hollow, empty eyes stared out from its skull, and a low, guttural growl rumbled from its throat. And then the lights went out. I heard Jack scream, but when the lights came back on he was gone. Vanished as if he'd never been there. We bolted for the stairs, hearts racing, barely able to breathe. But the house wasn't done with us. As we ran, the walls seemed to close in, the floor twisted beneath our feet, and the portraits on the walls began whispering. Their faces distorted, mouths moving in a silent scream. We reached the front door, which flung open on its own, and we tumbled out into the night. But as we reached the street, panting and shaking, I turned back one last time. The house was dark again. No lights. No figure. Just an empty, rotting shell. Jack was never found. The police searched the house, but it was empty, nothing but dust and decay. No candles, no symbols, no figure. The house was boarded up the next day, but every Halloween I still hear Jack scream. And sometimes if I get too close to that house, I swear I see his face staring out from one of the broken windows begging for help.